Okay, so welcome back. I'm Marianne Brewer, and I'm here to share with you part two of our webinar series called Magnetize Your Horse-Human Relationship. I'm happy to be back with you again, and if you remember, this is me there with my horse Summer out on the beach, and we're going to get started on the second part of the top three challenges that most horse owners today are facing, and that is fitness. And this is fit in mind and in body. So it's mental fitness, physical fitness, and emotional fitness. And then we're going to work on physical strategies and conflicting information, some of it today and some of it on webinar number 3. And they're all available to you right now, webinar number 1, 2, and 3. Obviously, fear, which is what I addressed on video 1, and actually productive mindset use is pretty much what we talked about in webinar number 1. So let's get right into it. I look forward to sharing this information with you and seeing where we can get. So where we left off, we talked about committing to not going down the rabbit hole of making yourself wrong for any number of reasons, being uncoordinated or not fit enough, or not present or unable to focus or pay attention, or whatever it is that we did, not being coordinated enough. Like, don't go down the rabbit hole of making yourself wrong. Just don't go there. Just commit to cleaning it up and moving on. And so again, I am somebody who really is interested in the origins of things like words and sayings, because I think that they have an energy. So I looked up commitment, and I like both 1 and 2, the state or quality of being dedicated to a cause or activity. And then 2, an engagement or obligation that restricts freedom of action. And going down the rabbit hole, that's really what we're talking about. We're talking about committing to not going down the rabbit hole. So restricting your freedom to go to this place of saying, oh, I'm just not good enough, right? I'm just not coordinated enough, or I'm just not smart enough, or I can't focus, or I can't, walk backwards, or I need to stop walking backwards. Why can't I walk forward? Or I have no rhythm and I'm having a hard time, with the rising trot or following footfalls or whatever it is. Like, don't give yourself permission to go there, because when you do, it's like your mind checks out instead of your mind remaining focused on the thing that you're doing. So actually, commitments are things that really help you to be true to your word that says, I really want to make a change here. So it's the quality or state of being dedicated to a cause or activity. So we're going to work a little bit on physical strategies today. And what I'm going to ask you to do is commit to whatever is needed for you in your particular situation. Maybe you need to be more athletic. Maybe what you need to do is lose a few pounds, or you need to increase your circulation or increase your amount of air that you have available to you. So maybe walking 3 days a week would be a good start. First just go slow and just gradually commit to being able to walk 5 miles 3 days each week. Walking 3 days each week will help you have more air and endurance. It'll help you with blood flow to your brain, to your fingers, to your toes. And that, when you put in this kind of dedication and commitment and work to a fitness goal, you find yourself making healthier food choices. You just will naturally gravitate to eating healthier things. It's just what happens. You could elicit the help of a friend, a getting fit buddy. Friends can be very motivating when something comes up or we just don't want to. Like today, it's, in the 20s, it's cold outside. And it's only because I made a commitment to my students, to help them progress through the winter that I went out this morning and I had a horsemanship lesson. And I promise you, it was productive. And, my student would not have done that if they didn't have me holding them to account for it. So a getting fit buddy is something that can really make a difference. So I highly recommend it. You could walk with your horse. This is something I absolutely love to do, whether we're walking on the beach or we're walking somewhere else. I have a dog, and see that field out there? She loves to go out there. So every day, whether I want to or not, almost no matter what the weather, she's dragging me out there to go have a walk. So taking your dog for maybe a longer walk than you'd like, or than is normal, might actually be a good way to do that. And don't tell the dog no. Don't say, no, it's only 20 degrees, I don't want to go today, or it's only 100 degrees and I don't want to go today, right? Because we can make the weather be a thing for us. Taking a walk with your horse and allowing them to forage along the woods line and see what it is that they like to eat. That top right picture is my Sterling, and we found that he loves to eat reeds, and they're very high in vitamin C, is what I found out while we were out walking one day. So that you don't have to necessarily just go out and ride, especially if it's too cold to ride. You might actually walk with your horse. You'll generate a little bit more body heat, and you guys can go together. And then the picture on the bottom right there is me just playing at Liberty with a horse. You know, when you first start playing at Liberty with a new horse, you tend to move a lot. You know, the horse might be farther away, or might want to go farther away, and maybe you need to be quicker when you jump into action to cut off a projected path, or get your projected path where it needs to be, or really talk with a horse. So playing at Liberty with your horse with no tools. Do you see I've got no sticks, because I don't want to be chasing my horse. I want to use my body language, and I really want to talk with my horse and create a language. So I do that without tools. Like, I'm not forcing, I'm communicating is the point. Playing at Liberty with your horse is a really nice way, maybe to take some ground on your fitness goals as well. So these are just really creative, fun ways to use friends and animals to hold us to account for the things that we say that we want. So maybe one of the things you need to do is be more focused or coordinated. Finding a weekly yoga or martial arts class to help you with feel, timing, and balance, boy, your horse will really thank you for that. I studied yoga for years and years and years, and I did it for my horses. You know, I was the girl in class trying to figure out of what value could it possibly be to my horsemanship if I were able to figure out how to stand on my head. You know, like, there didn't seem to be any good reason in the world why anybody would want to stand on their head. But when I found a good horsemanship reason, then it worked for me. You know, I did the work to get that done. And what I made up about it was, wow, if I could stand on my head, like, what else can I do? Like, what would that do for my balance and feel and timing and coordination when I go out and practice with my horse? Or what will it do for my determination and my commitment to figure out a way through a thing instead of avoiding a thing? I took Kung Fu classes for a couple of years as well. And I actually took these Kung Fu classes because they were all about creating the most direct line thinking that I could. So how do I get from here to there in the most efficient way? So I learned a lot about the geometry of moving with another being, because when you play your Kung Fu, you always play with another person. So that was really, really valuable. So there's lots of martial arts that, you know, can really be helpful. So I highly recommend those things. And there's classes everywhere, and there's videotapes, and, you know, practicing in the comfort of your own home is certainly something that's possible these days. But perhaps you need to change your diet and include maybe more water and maybe less caffeine. Maybe you're a person who's drinking too much caffeine and you find you can't settle your molecules when you get to your horse. You know, so many of us live really busy lives, and, you know, we show up to see our horse and we've got 1 hour, and, you know, we need to get things done in a hurry. But maybe, you know, the horse has been grazing in the pasture all day and they really don't have the same time frame as we do. And I'm not suggesting that they can't get in the same time frame as we do, but are we being present to their needs? Are we being present to their wants and their wishes? Maybe a little bit of chamomile tea added to your diet might help you to settle your molecules, so you might be a tad bit more patient than you would if you had coffee on your way to the barn. And practice your horsemanship away from your horse by noticing what you're doing in your daily interactions and relating the patterns to your horse interactions. You know, for example, our horses are all naturally asymmetrical, right? Meaning they go better one way than the other because they're quadrupeds, so there's 4 limbs, and they have lots of options about carrying legs and pushing legs and holding legs, like where we have just kind of 2 options. We have a left and a right, meaning we have maybe a left arm and a right arm. So we're left-handed or left dominant or right dominant or right leg dominant or left leg dominant, whatever it is. But if we can notice these things, like if you're right-handed and you can start using your left hand to do some things, you might have some insight into maybe how you are creating natural imbalances in your horse and adding to their already naturally imbalanced natural asymmetries. So practicing your horsemanship away from your horse is a really, really helpful thing. Outdoor exercise in all seasons, I highly recommend it. Outdoor exercise gives you things like natural light and natural air, things that are oftentimes or can be more helpful for you than indoor lighting or indoor air. No matter what the season, don't hibernate. Embrace every single day because your horse does. Your horse doesn't hibernate unless you make them hibernate. Horses in nature don't hibernate. They live every single day. I live on a farm with lots of animals, and every single day they're out foraging for what they need. The birds and the bees, they're all doing the same thing. And if we're going to be more horse-like, we need to be out in all of the elements and all the different times of the day. Just because it's evening doesn't mean we can't go out and do things with our horses. I'm going to tell you some stories in the next webinar about when I was in horsemanship school and how I needed to get up really early, well before the sun, and get some chores done. And you might be in that boat too. And you'll learn that your horse doesn't care, especially if you've got a horse that lives outside 24/7. It makes no difference to them whether it's daytime or nighttime. And to prove that, there's a book that I love that I highly recommend. It's called Justin Morgan Had a Horse. And Justin Morgan, the story goes that every single day people saw his horse like sleeping in the pasture and lazing about all day. And what they didn't know was that Justin Morgan was training his horse at night. And so when he showed up for the race and he beat everybody, they were all shocked because they never saw him do anything but sleep in the pasture. Yeah, Justin Morgan had a horse. And here's one of the things we just did this summer, practicing your horsemanship away from your horse. When you can do something like play in a community of drums, play communal drumming, going to a drum circle and actually borrowing a drum, or if you've got one of your own, and playing in rhythm with others. It's amazing how much timing and feel you actually learn in the safety and comfort of drumming in a drum circle. It'll give you some encouragement to perhaps find more places to be in harmony with your own horse, and not expect them to be in harmony with you, but maybe have you also do the work of being in harmony with them. It's a two-way street. It goes both ways. And avoid making the same mistakes repeatedly. And I know that this is hard, and this is why I wrote this 16-page free ebook for you. It's a 16-page lesson on becoming a keen observer and busting the myth of the horse whisperer. It's simply a lesson in observation, clean observation, without interpretation, without a history of a past, without emotion. It takes the guesswork out and it allows you to see what there is to see in the moment. That is the way that we can avoid making the same mistakes over and over again. Because sometimes what will happen is we'll see that we are having a place where we're consistently not reaping the benefits and the rewards that we want. So we become an avoidaholic. We may find that we had a bad trail ride one time, so we don't want to go on the trail anymore. Or we found that one time, I was asking my horse online to jump some things, and he had a hard time, so I don't ask him to jump those things anymore. One time I was cantering my horse on grass, and my horse slipped and fell, so I don't canter on grass anymore. Like, there's lots of ways to become an avoidaholic. My horse doesn't trailer load, so I don't go on trails. And what happens is the dream that we actually got a horse for it goes away. And what takes its place is whatever we actually have. Now, I'm not suggesting anything is wrong with adjusting to fit the situation, but if we're becoming an avoidaholic, that's a different story. But recovery is available, and I'm going to suggest that you hire a private one-on-one horsemanship coach. And I'm going to tell you about my one-on-one horsemanship coaching program a little bit later in this webinar. So it is the way to recovery. Having somebody hold you to account, having somebody who is your biggest cheerleader, having someone who's a committed listener, having somebody who's a committed helper in your problem-solving skills. There's a lot available when you have, and when you actually hire a private one-on-one horsemanship coach for a period of 6 months, there's a lot that can change for you. So here's some encouragement for you to live the dream that you got a horse for. This is me, and this is my horse, Miss Patches, or Angie, as I like to call her. And this is us in horsemanship school. And when I was just 18 years old, I got married, and I had 3 children by the time I was 25. It was in my early 40s that I actually sold my business. I rented out my farm, and I set out on an amazing journey across the United States with my girl, Miss Patches. This was a long time dream come true, and it only happened because I did personal mindset work. I got coaching on what I wanted, and I became unstoppable. And so here's the thing, right? So I would spend every day, all day long at work, thinking about the horses and thinking about what I wanted to do or what lesson this horse taught me, and then apply those lessons in my daily interactions at work. So either the people I worked for, or the people who worked for me, or my coworkers in other situations, or even my family. And I started to realize this was so much bigger than just a part-time, recreation for me. This was something I was passionate about and something I really wanted to pursue. So that was at the end of 2004. It was in 2004 that I did this personal development work, and I was in a program where I got I had a personal coach, and my coach said to me, Marianne, what do you want to do with the rest of your life? And I tell you, it was really funny. I spent 3 weeks talking about and writing down, making a list of all the things I didn't want to do, because that was the only thing that was in my frame of reference. I didn't really know, I was limited by what I thought was possible. But when I got all that stuff that I didn't want to do out of the way, and when I dwelled on it for 3 weeks and I really saw how much I didn't want to do it, figuring out how to have what I wanted became the next challenge. So that's what I did. And I had a coach to do it. And it was, so that's what I did, right? So I renovated my farm, and I rented my house, and I sold my business. And, I took up my 2-horse trailer, my little 2-horse straight load trailer, and we went all across the country. I spent the first 3 months of the year in Florida, and then the next month traveling across the southern United States, camping with my horse and riding everywhere. I spent all summer long in the beautiful San Juan Mountains in southern Colorado, learning with Angie. We had amazing adventures in the mountains, and we made many friends, both horse and human, and we learned a lot. Isn't that pretty? There's snow-covered mountains in the background, and there's snow in the foreground because it was spring, and there I am in a t-shirt. We're just breathing in the cool, beautiful mountain air. It was in the middle of 2005 that our friend and my second horse, Jessie, joined us in Colorado. I managed to get myself into a university module where we were going to do a colt start, and we were able to bring our unstarted young horses to the colt start. And so Jessie joined us. We all through the fall, we traveled through the middle of the country, and then we ended up back in Florida for the last 3 months of the year, and made it home just in time for Christmas. And that was in the year of 2005. Oh, and these are some pictures of me at school. This picture on the left here is a picture of me at school. And remember, I told you, right, I was going to tell you about being up in the wee hours of the night and how my horse didn't seem to care. But so there is kind of the picture on the left here, there's kind of a early morning hue to the picture. And that's because in this picture, I was actually on the feed team. And so the way that it went was you were on one of three teams. You were either on the jingle team, which happened first, then you were on the feed team. You could be on the feed team, and those people worked second. And then the cleanup team was third. Obviously, you need to make the mess before you could clean it up. So this is a picture of me when I was on the feed team. But when I was on the jingle team, the goal of the jingle team was to go out early in the morning. The feed team started feeding at 7 o'clock. So we had to have the horses in before breakfast, and the horses needed to be fed before breakfast. So we had to go out at 5 o'clock in the morning. And, this was in the fall. So 5 o'clock in the morning, it was dark. We had to find our horses in the 10-acre field. And there were 20 horses in that field. And then we had to saddle them up. And it's very, very dark in Colorado. Let me just tell you that. It's not like in New Jersey where there's a lot of night light and ambient light and city lights and street lights, even as close as like Philadelphia and New York might be to us. Like in Colorado, it's very dark. So we would saddle up our horses, then we'd ride out in the dark to the 200-acre where we needed to round up all the horses that were out there and then drive them in. And it's called jingling because typically it's a noise that your spurs make when you ride. I didn't wear spurs, but that was what the cowboys called going out and rounding up the horses and driving them all in. And so, of course, it was my first university module, and the university module before us had done a colt start, and they had a group of 12 colts that they'd started, and they had just gotten turned out in the 200-acre. So while all the horses knew what time they were going to eat, most of them were waiting kind of near where we needed to be, so it wasn't hard to find them. This new band of colts that was just turned out were always somewhere far away. They just had not gotten with the program yet. So there we were out looking for these colts every single morning. And there's real predators and there's real danger in the West in Colorado there, there's really are mountain lions and there really are bear and things that are real predators. And, so a band of young scared horses, could be hiding anywhere, and they're quiet. Horses are quiet. So you really got to look for them. So you're always hoping for a little bit of daylight. Usually it's our horses that told us here they are. So we would jingle them in, we would bring them all in and then drive them into their own pens where the feed team would come along and feed them. And then after breakfast, then the cleanup team would come and they would, somebody would take the horses back out. Sometimes it was the jingle team. Sometimes it was our young horses that we used to drive the rest of the horses back out. And then the horses that were going to be used stayed in for the day. And then the clean team would come and clean up afterwards. The picture on the top right over there, that's my girl Jessie, who got to come out and do a colt start with me. And one of the things you need to know, and any colt starter knows this, is one of the things that's important for a young horse when it's newly started under saddle is to give it a job. Give it some responsibilities so it has something to think about besides making stuff up, so he doesn't give you something to think about. So her job on this ride, we were on the beach, we were back in New Jersey here, and we were helping our older horse here go on the beach. And then in the bottom right photo, this was the beginning of 2006. And this is my arena of equine assisted psychotherapy. This is at an institution where we work. And this was my little angel who wore that donkey suit, Jackie. So that was the beginning of our journey of helping more than 15,000 people learn by way of the horse, learn problem solving skills and learn about themselves, not through teaching, but through experiential learning. It's been quite the experience. And this is my girl, Angie, and she is the horse that started me on this journey. That picture on the bottom right, that's her when she was just a baby. She's called Patches of Winter, and you can see why, right? She kind of looks like the earth. Her colors, her dark dirt and white snow. And she was the horse I got because remember over in webinar 1, I told you how my 10-year-old gelding who I got, like my 3 sons could ride that horse anywhere together, but I would get on him and he would buck me off. And I didn't know why. So brilliant me. I went out and got a baby horse so I could figure out why, all the whys. Yeah, I learned all the whys. And what I learned was I didn't know a thing, and I thought I was going to not live through the experience of actually having her. So there she is on the bottom. And then on the top right picture, that's her when we were away in horsemanship school and we were learning about physical fitness there. And then on the left is a picture when she was 25 years old. She passed when she was 27, which was just last year. And we spent every day of her life together from the time she was 4 months old until the day she passed. And she died with her head in my lap out in the backyard of natural causes. And while it was a sad passing, everyone dies, and it was sad and it was heartbreaking, and I miss her. She taught me so much. I am so grateful for this horse. And that's why at the bottom of every one of my coaching emails to my coaching clients, there's a picture of this horse, because she was the one who started it all. But, then the page turns and a new chapter of dance and art began for me. So it was when I finished school, I began working with many different people and horses, and I helped them to be safe and have fun and be confident and feel peaceful in their horse-human relationships. And I discovered a new love. I had a life-changing experience at Cavalia. So if you've not been to Cavalia, I'm going to show you some pictures. Cavalia is like Cirque du Soleil with horses, live music. It's just extraordinary. A woman there who I later got to meet and work with came out on stage in flowy clothes and 9 Arabian stallions completely at liberty. It was so lovely. They were so connected. This completely expanded my view of what was actually possible. I was smitten, and soon I learned about the power of the herd, and that working with many horses at once is often easier than working with one at a time. And so this was my new horse. I bought a baby horse. I bought an Andalusian, and it all began then. Here you go. It's a fantasy, right? These horses are magnetized. And this was Sylvia Zerbini, and she was part of Cavalia back in the day. And that was the woman who inspired me so much. I always want to dress in like flowy clothes now. So what I learned at home was that many people actually didn't know how to have a relationship with their horses at liberty or in groundwork. If the horse wasn't being ridden, or for some reason it couldn't be ridden, it was simply put out to pasture. And this was happening more and more to horses at increasingly young ages. And I knew that I could help. I knew that I wanted to get people out of the round pen, and I wanted people to have long-term relationships with their horse, even if they did not ride them. Ultimately, because I want a forever home for every horse. I want horses to have a place in the world, because the fact remains today, especially in America, no one needs a horse. They are purely for recreation. So if we can have horses that can truly be recreation for us, they're going to have a much longer life. So let's get to work training our minds to give us what we want. So thoughts that support what we want are called inner pictures. Okay, so I want you to take the time to picture exactly what you want and notice it in excruciating detail. Okay, you see this girl? So she's about to do an acrobatic routine on this balance beam, and she's daydreaming. She's using her inner pictures to actually picture what every bit of her routine is going to look like, what each finger does, what each foot does, the smile on her face, right? So Napoleon Hill, in his book called Think and Grow Rich is a money mindset book, but I'm the girl who shows up in class with horses on her brain. So when I read a money mindset book, I think of how is this going to help my horsemanship? So Napoleon Hill teaches us that imagining in detail trains our brains to pursue these pictures. Remember in webinar 1 when I talked about fears and how we are feeding our subconscious mind? We are seeding it, we are watering it, we are shining a light on it, we are cultivating, and then ultimately harvesting what we put in there, kind of like the girl with the bicycle, the girl and the horse with the bicycle. Like, what are we putting in there? We need to imagine in detail the things that we want, and we need to keep shining a light on those things. That's where coaching helps, because we keep creating the pictures. When we have these pictures, we want to add feelings to these pictures. Like, do you see this girl? When she sees herself riding on this horse like that, look at the smile on her face. She's happy about this. You want this daydreaming to be as real as possible. You want to add all the emotions that support your pictures. Clearly, now this is not my picture, right? But seeing this in her mind's eye is definitely transferring to her body. This is kind of more my picture, right? Keeping this picture of this horse in my mind, being able to be on that horse bareback, wrapping my hands around two handfuls of mane and riding on the beach like that, that to me is a really good, clear picture. And if you can keep those pictures in your mind over time, those things are going to happen, no matter what those things are. Keeping that clear picture alive in your mind over time, cultivating it, daydreaming about it, visioning about it, drawing it, looking at videos of things you want. A beginner's mind is very useful for this, for learning new things, even if, or especially if you're not new to horses. Sometimes what we know gets in our way. In fact, it often does. Taking on the thinking of a beginner's mind can help to overcome images in your mind that don't support your desired pictures. You want to wonder, where are your images coming from? Because if they're not the things that you want, you need to eliminate them. And the way you do that is you overseed your subconscious mind with all of the wonderful things that you do want, through maybe meditation, through continuing to vision and daydream and, look to see, and using your imagination. Now, there are two kinds of imagination. There's a thoughtful imagination, and that's imagination that comes from our thoughts or what we already know. And then there's creative imagination. Creative imagination comes from pure creativity, and it usually comes as some sort of an inspiration or a feeling. Like, I have a friend who'll call me and she'll say, I had such an amazing inspiration today in the shower. So where do your inspirations come from? Kids are fabulous at this creative imagination. They don't get stuck in the rules, or they don't get stuck in what things are supposed to be like. They have imagination and they transfer it right to the horses. And I tell you, I think that's half the reason why my 3 kids at one time could ride my gelding and I couldn't. If we can think of imagination as a faculty that can be strengthened and expanded, it can be cultivated and harvested when it produces new fruit, we can allow our creative imagination to run wild and free, and then add our thinking imagination to guide those pictures. We want to practice this until we can create the pictures we want on demand. And I have proof of this. Have you ever seen a thing happen in your mind's eye before it happened? I mean, maybe with the 1 or 2 exceptions in my whole life of riding, anytime I came off of a horse, I saw it happen before it happened. It's like I created it in my mind's eye and then it happened. So I'm not asking you to pretend those things aren't there. What I'm asking you to do is overseed your garden, overseed your subconscious mind with the things that you want, and continue to cultivate, continue to water and shine a light on those seeds and let them grow and overseed the weeds. Pull the weeds out if you need to, but overseeding with the good things that you want is a real effective, true mindset strategy to help you have what you want with your horse. It helps you to overcome those pictures of self-doubt and fear. And then you want to be the energy that you want to attract, right? This is a big one. You want to really add the energy to the pictures that you want. So we did a workshop here at In the Company of Horses. And what we were doing was we were having people walk in the riding area next to their horse. And the goal was, it was match, pace, and lead. So their goal was to match the speed their horses wanted to go. And they were just walking around in this field, and then stay pace with them, stay footstep to footstep with them, and then convince the horse without pulling on the lead rope to match our speed. So match pace and then lead them to actually our speed. So this is a warm blood horse, and this gal, she was exhausted from trying to keep up with him, but he's finally standing still. And I had to take their picture because she was like, oh my gosh, he's finally standing still. She was so happy about it. And then he was trying to help his off the track thoroughbred settle, but he has so much energy. It took a really long time. And here's a great example. He's in motion, she's standing still. So even now, when their energy is more matched, he still hasn't been able to settle his molecules enough to have her be able to match his energy. So often, we're actually adding the thing we don't want to our ride or to our groundwork with our horses. And when you have a commitment to keep the slack in your lead rope and not use your tools to help you get what you want, or to make your horse give you what you want, not to help, because that's what the tools are for. They're there to help. But when you make a commitment to using your tools as a last resort, you'll be surprised what you discover. Now, this is awesome, right? These three have completely matched energy. Even their footfalls are matching, right? Do you see all their left feet are forward, front and hind for the horse, all the right feet are trailing. And now, interestingly enough, these people were in an equine assisted learning workshop. They were not in a horsemanship workshop. Nobody was teaching them anything. They were in a team building, a leadership workshop. And these people didn't even know each other, and they didn't know this horse until this day. But they were trying to get something done, and they figured out how to get in sync and in harmony and how to match so they could pace and then lead this horse. They had no ropes on the horse. They had nothing attached. Now, these people actually have tools, but look how many of them there are. If you want to be the energy that you want to attract, controlled and forward and inside of some sort of boundaries, whether it's a hula hoop type boundary or whether it's a mindset boundary where we're connected without a harness, or we're actually connected with tools. We don't have to do anything without tools, but tools can look like anything. So far, here's what we've got, right? So we want to imagine in detail and add the emotion that comes with picturing what it is that we want, right? And we want to really know what we want. We want to really, really have a picture that inspires us, really have something that changes everything. And then we want to add the energy that we need and a strong desire. A strong desire is a powerful motivator. It's more than a mere, I'd like to do this or I want to do that. These statements of declaration can be very motivating. So this is Angie and I, and we both love the serenity of the Pine Barrens. It's a unique ecosystem in the world, and it's home to many plants and animals that only live here in the New Jersey Pine Barrens. Can you smell the water? Filling up your senses with what you desire is another important part of completing the picture of what you want. And I ask if you can smell the water, because I had a picture like this and I said it was cedar water, and someone said, I don't think that's right. And I said, no, it is. It's cedar water. And she said, well, what is cedar water? And here in the Pinelands, we have a lot of cedar trees, and so many trees that they actually leave a sediment in the water. And if you put your hand in the water and scoop out 2 handfuls of water, there's actually some sediment that's floating in the water, and the water smells like it. It smells like earthy cedar and water. So it smells wonderful. I love, love, love the way it smells. And you can swim in the water, and it's not bad for you. In fact, it's here in New Jersey, and people used to say that these were the healing waters of the Pine Barrens, and people from like Philadelphia and New York would come just to soak in the waters in the Pine Barrens because they said it was very full of minerals and very healing for you. So the cedar gets on your skin and your bathing suit, and you can just wipe it right off. It doesn't stain your clothes or anything. But I know that she loves the serenity of the Pine Barrens because she told an animal communicator that she loved that. This is me and my girl, Jessie, and we're here again in the Pinelands. And to feel alive and happy in nature with your horse in a serene place, that can be a mighty motivator. And that's a big motivator for me. I love to be out with my horses. I love to go places. I love to do practical things with my horse. I've never been a competition type of person. I know people are, and that's fine with me. But that's never really been who I've been. I've always been about the relationship, which obviously goes with you wherever you go, whether it's to the Pinelands or to the show or wherever you go. But this is a big motivator for me. So what do you desire with your horse? So I had a strong desire and a clear picture. So this is my horse, Sterling. And when I got him as a baby, I wanted him to lay down when I asked. I didn't want to use ropes. I just wanted to ask and have him say yes. I didn't want to use tools to do it. So I began to reinforce his idea of laying down and rolling, because it was becoming a habit. Every day when I came out and to feed him, he would lay down in this dirt spot and he would roll. So I started feeding him right there. So I did that for 7 days in a row. And of course, he started laying down all the time, because you know horses do that, right? When they get rewarded for something, they're like, oh, how about I do this here? How about I do this now, right? So I thought, well, what else can I do with this? And so I thought, well, all right, he's going to lay down. Maybe I can just ask him to back up a little bit, and maybe he will sit, and maybe he will wait there. And I had only asked him a couple of times to do it, and he was in. That was it. Now he'll sit, he'll lay, he'll roll over. He's so funny. Here's another, this was a strong desire that this woman had. She actually told me this story herself. A woman that I know, she lost 150 pounds so she could ride in her daughter's fancy Western show saddle. So this saddle was a gift for her daughter. And it turned out to be really a true gift for herself. She never told anyone. The woman was obese, and she made a commitment to herself to lose weight, to buy a horse, to learn to ride, and to put this fancy show saddle on the horse and to show in Western pleasure classes. The story was later featured in Western Horseman, the magazine, but she was unreasonable. She didn't let the reasons from her past or the reasons that she was obese stop her in the present. That took a mindset shift. Our minds are set up to give us what we want and do the work to have if we cultivate them properly. We can't just let them run wild and run loose. So I said she was unreasonable, right? And I'm going to tell you that I want you to be unreasonable. And that doesn't sound like a proper thing, right? But reasons for things happening often get in the way. Good reasons and bad reasons. And reasons come from the past. They can affect the present. And we want to see if we really want them to affect the future. So if we've made a commitment to walk 3 days each week and there are only 2 days left and we haven't walked because of the weather, this is an example of being reasonable. In this case, being unreasonable would help us cover some ground on the fitness levels that we want to have. Having somebody count on you could make a really big difference in your being unreasonable when it comes to the things that you say you want. So I didn't know what I didn't know, and nobody does, right? So I always wanted more space. So I live on a farm and I have just about 7 acres. And I always wished that I lived where I had more space. But what I did here was I only had about 2 acres that was fenced in, and that 2 acres was pretty much a dirt lot at the time. I had 7 acres, but I had this creek that ran down the middle of the property, and I couldn't really figure out what I was going to do with that. And the other side of the creek was all overgrown, and I pretty much didn't do anything with that property. There was woods, and you know, in New Jersey, most people, well, almost all people, we keep our horses in square pens of varying sizes. You know, sometimes it's a 25-acre field, and sometimes it's individual square lots. And so that's what I did. And that's how my property was set up when I got here. But I went away to horsemanship school and I realized my horse was very athletic. My horse was very smart about where she put her feet. And I was very busy learning a lot of things, and I really couldn't worry about where she was putting her feet. So when I came home, I reconfigured my entire property and I made what is known as a track system. So I fenced in the entire 7 acres. And from there, I started making these tracks. So I have on the top right picture there, you'll see I have a couple of places where I have square pens that kind of, like this pen, like where it says stallion, like that's on the inside. And then the bears are on the outside of this track. And I've put this varied terrain on the outside of the track. And so my stallion can actually run with my mares almost around the entire property. The only place he cannot go with them is the video on the left. They're actually going through the creek to go into the front lawn. He cannot go into the front lawn with them because of his pasture right here. But other than that, he can go from this pasture, he can go into the woods, and he can go out into the big field in the backyard, and they go on the perimeter of the whole track. And then I feed them in these small mesh hay nets, and I put these all around, and they go about and they eat them all over the place. And then they've taught themselves to go through the creek, and you can see that water gets quite deep. Even little Maya, she has to actually get a little swimming going to get through there. So they've learned to go down muddy banks and steep banks and through water and varied terrain all on their own, because the grass in the front lawn is very lush. And so they get out there and they run around. If you can see them running around, they always get out there and run all around for a little bit, and then they stop and graze, and they don't stop grazing until I call them to come back. But that space is not always available for them to go out into the front lawn. You know, I have a little rope gate that I put up across this path here. And so they don't always get the opportunity to go out there because it is the front lawn. But when they do, they get really, really happy about it. And you can see they have to jump up the bank on the other side. But because of that, I don't have a horse that's afraid of crossing any water at all. And I didn't teach them any of that. I just used what I always had. And really, that just took a mindset shift for me. I always had this space. I just never imagined using it. So I kind of reimagined when I got myself unstuck. I was able to reimagine how I could actually use my property. Can't really see that little horse going, but she's got it figured out. Those little horses, they're mighty. So thinking about a thing is not necessarily enough to bring it to fruition. Thoughts and actions need to actually work in concert with one another to bring to life the dream that you actually got a horse for. What's important is that you and your horse decide what's important to you and not what's important to me or anyone else. This is be like you horsemanship, only be the best you can be. Like this horse owner likes her horse to wait there for her, so he does. And if a behavior is important to you, it'll become important to your horse. So they have rules at this barn that when your horse is in the aisle, you need to put it on cross ties. Well, she doesn't want to do that. She just wants her horse to wait there. So she tacks him up in his stall. It's right across the hallway from her tack room. So he waits there. And if he ever leaves, she puts him back. At first, she started to obviously leave a halter and lead rope on him, and she just would leave the lead rope on the ground. But then after a while, he knew that he would just wait there, and she would bring him lovely things, and it was all good. It was a thing that was important to her. So she paid a lot of attention to it. She gave it a lot of her attention and energy, and it became something important to her horse. Now, when she puts him somewhere, he stays there because he got used to it. She transferred this skill to other places. And so now the rules only apply to everybody else in the barn and not to this horse. Safely feeding mince to the entire herd, and everyone is welcome. This is another one of those places that was really important to me. So as long as everyone is experiencing safety, everyone is welcome. Mints are high on the list of most delicious treats, but it wasn't always this way. This herd and all the horses in my practice manage their behavior because this is a clear picture in my mind, and I've done the work to get that picture from inside of me out into them. So I use these horses free and loose in arenas where non-horse people participate with them all the time. And sometimes people want to take a cough drop out of their pocket, or sometimes people stop to eat crackers, or when somebody shows up with food, I don't want to make a bunch of rules about don't have food. I just want to teach my herd how to manage themselves around food. I want to be responsible for how my herd manages themselves around food. And so this was important to me. And this isn't even me, this is somebody else feeding mints to the entire herd and taking time to open each individual mint package and then pass them out. That was something that was important to me. So it became important to my horses. And I know that I can send anyone out into my herd with food and they can feed them all and they're going to be safe. The horses know how to manage themselves. And if anybody ever forgets, I remind them. If you need to know how to do this, ask me. I'd be happy to show you. We get here through principles instead of through rules. And this is how we traverse all of the conflicting information that we have. So this is just this is a video that I made not for this purpose, but it kind of fits in this purpose here. And this is principles in action. You see, principles are all about communication, right? Principles require both parties' contribution. So I need to be in communication and my horse needs to be in communication. And obviously in this case, my goat needs to be in communication too, right? You see, there's no ropes attaching her. She could do anything she wants. She has to be participating with me here. She has to be saying, yes, this is okay with me, or she would just leave. Working with horses through principles is what creates mutual and magnetized relationships between horses and their humans. Do you see how many times, and keep watching how many times as I go from side to side and like, see how she's talking to me there? I want to acknowledge that she's talking to me. See, that was my acknowledgement. Do you see how many times as I walk around her, I touch her, I put my heart in my hands and I touch her like with my heart to acknowledge how much I appreciate her working with me and even considering allowing me to put a saddle on her and to ride her. She is an off-the-track thoroughbred. She came to me as an 8-year-old, and she had 5 babies, and she had a racing career as an 8-year-old. She had lots of ideas about things when she first came. This doesn't happen overnight. This takes time and attention to detail. Each time she looks to me, I'm going to acknowledge her. Each time she does. Now, I'm over there trying to get some cookies. My goat, of course, knows exactly where those cookies are. But I want to reward her for her attention, for her participation, for her contribution. So I put her saddle on and I just tightened it up tight enough so it wouldn't fall off. Well, I just moved her around a little bit. This saddle video I actually made as a saddling demonstration for one of my students whose horse could not stand still to be saddled. And this was just a demonstration to show her how I wanted her horse to turn out, like how I wanted him to give her permission to put the saddle on, and how I wanted her to be able to acknowledge when her horse spoke to her. And one of the things I talked about here was that it's not lost on me that this horse is swishing her tail. So not assuming that it's not about the saddling, I want to check to see, is it about flies? This was like in July here in New Jersey, so it was quite warm and, buggy. So, there I am just asking her to, to just move around a little bit. And you see there's no strings attached. She's completely at liberty. She could go anywhere she wants. Happily, though, she tries to stay in the view of the camera. And she's willing to really put me in the perfect position so I can tighten up her cinch. And you notice how many times I do it? So I tighten it 3 times and I move her around in between each time I tighten that cinch. Again, I'm not sure that tail swishing is not about me. So I'm going to make sure that it's not about me. I'm not going to assume it's not. I'm not going to assume that it's just about the flies. I'm going to say, yeah, let me see what I'm doing. And if she continues to come to me and if she continues to participate with me, I'm going to assume it's not about me, right? Another acknowledgement. And so here's another place where principles come into play. So I'm just going to mount my horse. You'll notice I'm mounting from the right side and I'm doing my best to climb myself up on this tall horse. She's 16 plus hands. So I mount her on the right side, and then I sit there and I expect her to wait. Do you see that nice acknowledgement? Now, thank you. Now, what did I do with those cookies? Do you see her looking? Now, I do this to every one of my cookies. Horses, when I get on them, I expect them to wait for me. That's a principle that I have. Like, I don't want to, do the running mount where I get on my horse and right away they run away. So they wait for me because they know they're going to get some cookies. Now notice here I'm getting off the left side. So there's not a right and a wrong side. There's simply a right and a left side. That principle of having a left and a right side really helps my horses, all of them,